Hey guys, so this is going to be a review of Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is one of the books that helped start the Harlem Renaissance. It came out in 1937. From what I was reading, it was kind of a self-tale of, I'll hold it up for you there, kind of a self-tale of a love that Zora Hurston had herself. And so she wanted to put that on paper, a passionate love that she had later in life with a younger man. And so that's really what her relationship with tea cake is. She wanted to express how that quick, hot, passionate love can change a person. And so you start out with her as a young lady. You learn about her grandmother. You learn about her mother. You learn she's third generation half white. So her grandmother was a slave and was taken by a white man. I don't know how you'd call it. I mean, it's definitely rape, but it describes it in the book better than I can. And then her mom was raped by a teacher. And so her grandmother raised her with a loving white family where up until she was 6, she didn't even realize she was white. That somebody took a picture of her and she realized that she was white. And so she's telling her story. She just came back. They actually lived in a town called Eatonville down in Florida, which is a real town near Orlando. And so it was a black town. And so her grandmother tries to marry her off up in North Florida to a black man who's a farmer, much older than her. She wasn't happy with that life. So she meets a man. And he's charismatic. He's from Georgia. He's ready to become a better man. He wants to be a big man, like he says, who has big thoughts and big dreams. His name was Jody Starks, and he comes into the town. He buys a bunch of land. They're married. She didn't get a divorce, but she went to Jacksonville and married Jody Starks. And I guess her husband never found her, so everybody just believed that, it was her first marriage. She'd been married to Jody, and they come into town, and a farmer had given them the land to create Eatonville, and she comes through with her husband, and they're together for 20 years. He becomes the mayor. He opens a general store. They have a big house, and over the whole course of the time, he's been gaslighting her. He's been kind of holding her up like a trophy, where everything that he did revolved about keeping her separate. She was so separate from the people there. Nobody really knew her. She was beautiful. He made her keep her hair covered all the time. So she was, 20 years of marriage to this guy. She was just really, really bitter. And so finally they have a big fight in front of some people. And that sets Jody off. He doesn't want anything to do with her anymore. He makes her move to another room in the house. They don't share the bedroom anymore. He eventually gets sick and doesn't trust doctors. So he ends up passing away. So then she's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. She's running the store. She's an important woman. She's getting to know the people a little bit more, kind of coming out of her shell. And she meets Tea Cake, a younger man. The story starts where she's coming back from her time with Tea Cake, and she's telling her story to a friend. So she falls in love with Tea Cake. They have a hot and fast romance. They get married. They go down to the Everglades. They're working on a farm together. She has the money from the store. She's independently wealthy, but he's like, I don't need your money. And they go through a hurricane together. He gets bit by a dog that has rabies. She ends up having to shoot him. And so she then goes to court, and only because of the testimony of a white doctor does she get off. All the black people down there in the Everglades where she's been staying feel that she murdered her husband, and that not because he had rabies, which they all kind of knew that he was sick, but didn't believe her. And this white doctor was like, no, I know he's got rabies. So he lost himself. His mind broke. He didn't have the ability to differentiate between people he cared about and people he didn't. And so it's crazy to think. Like, I just felt sad the whole book. You start her life out, and you just feel the unhappiness of that farm life. You feel the unhappiness of, I didn't pick this life. I didn't choose this life. This is what my grandmother chose for me. She's telling me to settle at 17. I don't want to do it. I can't do it. I don't feel like doing it. It was so tough. And then she had these moments where she was kind of flighty. And, when I don't mean it in a bad way, but it was just, she was ready to go to something new. And I think in that, with, she meets a guy and she doesn't really know him. She'd only talked to him for a week, and then they met and they left. They got married after knowing each other for a week. She was running away from something. She ran straight into something else. Not He treated her well in the beginning, but once they were married, once they were settled, he kept her basically in a china cabinet. It kind of felt like, she wanted, because when they had the general store, they were the center of town. I'm gonna put the book down. Sorry. They were the center of town. It just, everything happened there, but he wouldn't let them be involved. He was so jealous, and I know Jody was keeping her safe because he said, hey, he saw, that one guy sniffing her hair and stuff like that. So yeah, there men wanted to get with her, and he was keeping her isolated. But things, the whole thing with, there's a whole scene with a donkey, and there's this old man, and they've been making fun of him because he's got this skinny donkey. And so every time at the shop, they're giving him crap about having a skinny donkey. And so he's sitting there going, man, he's just like that. I feed him plenty. I do. He kind of stutters, and I just, you gotta, you can't do that. He's just a donkey. And so he gets out, and they find him up by the general store, and so Jody buys him, and he kind of becomes the town mascot for a while. They just let him roam free, and Jody buys him because of something she says. She says that he should stop. They should stop treating that donkey like that. And so Jody looks at it and listens to his wife, but doesn't give her the credit, and frees the donkey. The donkey wanders around town. Everybody loves the donkey. When the donkey finally does pass away, they have this giant funeral for it, basically like a celebrity died in the town. And they go and they take him out and they drag him off and they let the buzzards eat him. And they have a whole ceremony. They sing songs. They preach at his funeral. All kinds of stuff. Well, she's not allowed to go. She has to stay at the store. Everybody in town's there. There's no reason for her to be at the store. So he's just keeping her pressed down. I watched a psychology episode about gaslighting. It was actually about the movie Tangled, and how the Mother Gothel gaslights Rapunzel. And so I feel like that's what he did. He consistently gaslighted her and put her off to the side. And so finally, when she has her freedom, she has the ability to be herself. You just feel so good for her. And then, man, when she gets with Tea Cake, they go off, they get married. She takes $200 with her. All the rest of her money's in the bank. She has $200 with her. Tea Cake takes her money while she's sleeping and goes and gambles it all away. Doesn't come get her. Does a bunch of stuff, buys everybody food, spends all her money. Dude, I was so mad. I was like, she made this bad decision. She got with Tea Cake. Oh man. And then his way to get it back is he's going to gamble and get it all back. Well, he was a good gambler. He was a hustler. So he did get the money back. But like, you don't do that to people. Oh man, it made me so mad. And then, so they go down to Jacksonville, and while they're down there, he's like, I'm going to take care of you. You just stay at the house. You don't have to do anything. I'm going to work the farm. And eventually times get tough. She's got to come farm too. So they're both out there. I think they're picking beans. I got the thing here. Starts kidneys begin to fail. They turn down. Harvesting beans. Yeah. So they're harvesting beans. And basically they've created this whole community. All the men that she's been with are successful men that are the center of attention, and she's next to them. She's like she's the light in the hand, I guess you would say. And so these men hold her up next to them as this thing that I have, this almost, I don't know, they put her on this pedestal, but she doesn't want to be on the pedestal. She wants to be there with everybody else. And I found it so disheartening just when you see the way that they treat her through the whole story. And at one point she does something and he hits her. I was mad. She's, it was like, well, I didn't hit her that hard or something like, and I know back in the late 30s, early 20s, that's not something that was as frowned upon. It was, every now and then your husband could hit you, but you better not do that crap. That's stupid. I hate that. And so there's a bunch of stuff here on this article I'm reading. They got Jody and Tea Cake and the Liberated Woman and Virgil Tea Cake Woods. Yeah, it was always every time she got abused, it was always because they thought she was too big for her britches. She should have been speaking in the situation, in the scenario. She shouldn't have been talking. And that's just so horrid. Like, she loved tea cake. She really, really did. And so they're in the Everglades. The Everglades is a swamp. I don't know if you've ever been down in South Florida. I grew up in South Florida. The Everglades is a swamp. There's gators, and basically you're just over the water line. I mean, you dig a little bit, you're digging into water. And so they're harvesting beans. It's good soil because, I mean, it's wet all the time. It's got all the decaying matter. It's black dirt. I mean, it's the kind of dirt you want to grow stuff in. And so the man who has the farm, Tea Cake's his number one guy. And so he's staying because they know the hurricane's coming. They've been told about it. I don't know how much advance warning they have, but a lot of people evacuate. And they say, oh no, it's not going to be that bad. Hurricane is not going to be that. And so they're in the house with another guy named Motorboat. Everybody down there on that little farm had nicknames. It was funny. And so Motorboat is sleeping, and then the storm comes and it gets bad. So they get out of the house. It's flooding real bad. Tea Cake and Janie are holding on to this cow. Cow's floating, being swept away in the flood. And you're sitting here going, man, what's going to happen? And this mean dog comes up, bites Tea Cake on the face. He beats the dog off, keeps the dog away from Janie, protects her, and then everything comes fine. They find Motorboat later on. He stayed asleep the whole time. The house floated off like a mile down the road and then set back down, and Motorboat was fine the whole time. He's kind of like Dorothy. And then they find out the dog had rabies. So I don't know. I didn't know much about rabies. I kind of looked up a little bit. You have to get shots in your stomach if you get bit by a dog that has rabies, and if you don't do it in enough time, you get really, really thirsty. And so he was getting really, really thirsty, and he started having like violent nightmares. Like they could no longer sleep in the same bed together. The doctor said if we'd found this earlier, we would have been able to save him. But I don't think we can save him. So she took all the guns away. He ended up finding a pistol. And what she did is he had like 2 bullets in it, and it was like 5-shooter pistol, I think, if I remember correctly. So she turned it, if you look at a revolver, she turned it onto the chamber at the front. So the first empty chamber. So he would have to pull the trigger on her 3 times before she had to do anything. So when he finally confronts her and he's like threatening her with the gun, she gets the rifle. Tea Cake actually trained her how to shoot, and she was actually a better shot than Tea Cake. So she grabs the rifle and she's like, put the gun down, Tea Cake. So he pulls the trigger. She tries talking to him again. He pulls the trigger again. He's like, maybe he just doesn't know what he's doing. She pulls the trigger again. So she's starting to freak out. She picks the gun up. She's pointing at him. I mean, this is her husband. She loves him. She doesn't want to hurt him, but he's got rabies. He's not in his right mind. And as he's about to pull the trigger again, she shoots him. I believe the bullet goes up over her head, and he dies. And she's there with him, and all the men in the town believe that she murdered Tea Cake because she didn't want to be his husband anymore. And so she goes to court. She's taken to court for murder. They believe that she's a murderer, and so the doctor has to come in and save her and testify for her. The master has to come in and testify for her. So she's saved by 2 white men. She's not believed in herself. She can't say, my husband was threatening me with a gun. He clearly had a gun in his hand, but her word didn't matter. And luckily, the white doctor knew what was going on and saved her life. But, the level of powerlessness where the black men were mad at her, and they even, were speaking behind, because they were sitting back behind. You've seen a courtroom, obviously. You've seen Law and Order, but she's sitting here. She's on the stage, and then they got the witness, and so all the black men were behind her, and they said, well, if she'd have shot a white man, she'd be going to jail. She'd get hung, but don't matter. White men and black women are the most protected people in the world. And eventually she brought them around to her way of thinking, and she kind of showed them the evidence. But she really had to fight for her life, you know, after having to kill the man she loved. Like, I was emotionally wrecked at the end of the story. And it was tough, man. It really was. I mean, my copy's a little beat up. I think somebody had this for a class because they wrote all over it, and it's the really big font. So if you're a little hard of vision, you can read this one real easy. But they really did a lot in the beginning. They annotated all kinds of stuff, and then as they went on, they kind of quit a little bit, and they underlined a word here and there, highlighted something. But it's not a long book. It looks long. It looks big because the big print on this one, but it's only a couple hundred pages. Yeah, they just started highlighting. But I don't mind having a used copy. It's kind of fun. The way the writing was, I found it unbelievably beautiful. The way she talked about opening up like a flower and learning more about herself and her life, learning more about how she wanted to live as a person. What a beautiful story. It really, really was. I'm so glad that I read it. So I'll sign off with you guys here. Try to ramp up my videos a little bit. I know I've been on vacation and kind of very sparse on the February videos, but March will be a month of maybe 3 videos a week. We'll see how that works out. But talk to you guys later, and bye.